The U.S. government has officially certified a type of home as capable of surviving a direct hit from an EF5 tornado or a Category 5 hurricane. It reduces energy bills by as much as 75%. It can cut insurance premiums by up to 90%. It doesn't rot, it doesn't burn, and it doesn't attract termites. Built correctly, it can stand for centuries. And yet, in a country that constructs more than 1 million new homes every single year, fewer than 900 of these structures currently exist as residences. It's called the monolithic dome. This is the story of the family who brought it back to life, the engineering secrets that make it virtually indestructible, and the financial and regulatory machinery that has made it nearly impossible for the average American to build one. The dome didn't originate in a modern engineering lab. It is, without question, the oldest enclosed structural form ever devised by human beings. Roughly 19,000 years ago in what is now Ukraine, prehistoric builders were bending mammoth tusks and animal hides into curved shelters. They had no written plans, no engineering formulas, no mathematics to speak of. What they had was direct observation. The curved form deflected wind. It distributed weight. It held together when every flat structure around it collapsed. 17,000 years before the first concrete was ever mixed, the dome was already the answer. By the 2nd century AD, Roman architects had understood something the Western world would take another 1,800 years to fully internalize. An arch rotated 360 degrees around its central axis creates a three-dimensional shell that spreads load in every direction at once. In 125 AD, they put that understanding to work building the Pantheon in Rome, the largest unreinforced concrete dome ever constructed. Nearly 2 millennia of earthquakes, floods, fires, and wars later, it still stands. That same structural logic appears across cultures and centuries. The Inuit igloo is a catenary dome of compressed snow, shaped specifically to convert the weight of the structure into compressive force rather than bending stress. A hemisphere under load tends to crack. A catenary curve doesn't. It channels force downward into the ground instead of outward into failure. Wallace Neff was the first modern builder to revisit this logic when he constructed what became known as the Bubble House in 1941, an early experiment in inflated formwork that sparked a new generation of dome builders. Among those who followed were the South brothers, who by 1976 had arrived at a clear architectural conviction. The continuous round shell is structurally superior to every other form of enclosure that exists. But conviction alone didn't solve the engineering problems. David South spent years experimenting with geodesic designs inspired by Buckminster Fuller and kept running into the same fundamental issue. Geodesic construction requires an enormous number of individual joints, and every joint is a potential failure point for leaks, for structural weakness, for material waste. The real breakthrough came in 1975 when the South brothers pioneered a construction process that inverted the entire method. Instead of building a frame and filling it in, they used an inflated fabric form as a mold, working from the inside out. The result was a seamless, joint-free, steel-reinforced concrete shell 105 feet in diameter and 35 feet tall. They patented the process in 1977 and 1979. 2 years later, they built one as their own family home. They called it Cliff Dome. It became something of a local landmark, offering tours up to 4 times a week to visitors from across the country. The 8,000-square-foot structure contained 8 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a full-sized volleyball court, and an indoor garden. At the time, it was considered the apex of what monolithic dome construction could achieve. The construction process is unlike anything in conventional home building, and understanding it is key to understanding why the finished product performs the way it does. It begins with a circular concrete ring beam set directly into the ground. To that beam, the construction crew attaches an airform, a custom fabricated membrane of PVC-coated polyester fabric. High-powered blowers inflate it into a dome shape. Workers enter through an airlock. At that point, you're essentially inside a pressurized fabric bubble, and the actual building process begins from the inside. The first material applied to the interior surface is closed-cell polyurethane foam, sprayed to roughly 3 inches of thickness. That foam layer is doing three distinct jobs simultaneously. It creates a thermal barrier with an R value exceeding R20. It provides enough rigidity to support steel reinforcement and wet concrete before they cure. And it acts as a mounting surface for the rebar hangers that come next, horizontal hoops and vertical bars tied across the entire curved interior in two directions. After the steel is in place, shotcrete is applied, a concrete mix fired at high velocity through a spray nozzle. Because it's projected rather than poured, it compacts more densely than standard cast concrete. It builds up in layers until the shell reaches between 3 and 12 inches of thickness. When it cures, the result is a single, continuous piece of steel-reinforced concrete running from the foundation ring all the way to the apex. No seams, no joints, no connections to fail. Engineers describe this structure as having a service life measured not in decades, but in centuries. There is one detail in the construction sequence that explains most of the dome's energy performance, and it's the exact opposite of how a conventional home is built. In a standard wood frame house, the insulation sits inside the wall cavity, positioned between the living space and the exterior. The structural mass of the building, such as it is on the wrong side of that thermal barrier. It never gets a chance to store energy. In a monolithic dome, the insulation layer is on the inside surface of the concrete shell. That means hundreds of tons of concrete sit between the insulation and the living space. Once you heat or cool the interior of a dome, all of that thermal mass absorbs the energy and holds it, releasing it back slowly over the course of hours. The building itself becomes a temperature regulator. This is why a 3,000 square foot dome home in Mesa, Arizona, a city where outdoor temperatures exceed 100 degrees for more than 100 days per year, recorded a peak summer electricity bill of $199 a month, while a comparable conventional home in the same metro area typically runs between $400 and $600 during peak cooling season. And in Virginia, one family documented total annual energy costs of just $900 for their 2,600 square foot dome, less than most Americans spend heating a one-bedroom apartment. The energy story alone is compelling, but the disaster performance is what truly separates this structure from everything else being built today. The catenary curve that defines the dome's shape isn't just aesthetically distinctive, it's a structural mechanism. Every load the building experiences, whether that's the weight of the shell itself, accumulated snow, lateral wind force, or seismic activity, gets translated directly into the foundation as compression. There are no corners where wind pressure can leverage a roof upward. No flat wall panels where force can accumulate until something gives way. A 300-mile-per-hour wind generates roughly 400 pounds of force per square foot against a flat surface. Against a dome, that same wind has no flat face to push against. It flows up and around the curved surface, and the building barely registers it. The Federal Emergency Management Agency has formally rated monolithic domes as providing near-absolute protection from EF5 tornadoes and Category 5 hurricanes. To earn that designation, a structure must withstand a 15-pound 2x4 piece of lumber traveling at 100 miles per hour. The standard projectile test used to simulate debris in extreme wind events. Against a standard brick veneer wall, that projectile passes straight through. Against a 3-inch dome shell, it barely marks the surface. Real-world events have validated the lab results repeatedly. In May 2003, a tornado tracked directly over a 40-foot dome home in Polk County, Missouri. A nearly finished conventional house a quarter-mile away was demolished and scattered into the surrounding forest. The dome lost a single piece of window trim. After Hurricane Katrina in 2005, the New Life Family Church in Biloxi, Mississippi was among the very few large structures left intact in the city. A dome home in Pensacola, Florida, survived 3 consecutive hurricanes in the same season, Dennis, Ivan, and Katrina, without structural damage. And in perhaps the most extreme documented test of the technology, a monolithic dome government facility in Iraq in 2003 absorbed a direct hit from a 5,000-pound bomb. The interior was destroyed. The dome shell remained standing. Against fire, the performance is equally unambiguous. A steel-reinforced concrete shell qualifies as a Type 1 or Type 2 fire-rated structure under the International Building Code. There is no wood to ignite, no frame to collapse, and no accelerant built into the walls. The financial argument isn't just about monthly utility bills, though those savings alone are significant. A school district in Wisconsin constructed 5 monolithic dome buildings for a combined cost of $9 million. By the district's own estimates, the dome design saved approximately $8 million compared to what equivalent conventional construction would have cost, before a single utility bill was ever paid. The shell itself, before interior finishing, runs roughly $75 to $100 per square foot, broadly comparable to a mid-range conventional build. The real financial advantage compounds over time. Energy costs that run 50 to 75% lower than a standard home. No wood to rot and replace. No shingles to age out and tear off. No framing connections to crack and shift. And if you can qualify for an all-masonry insurance classification, premiums can run between 50 and 90% lower than a standard residential policy. Given the FEMA certification, the disaster record, the energy data, and the long-term economics, the question becomes unavoidable. Why does a country that builds more than 1 million new homes a year have fewer than 900 dome residences in total? The answer is bureaucratic, not architectural. In the United States, securing a conventional mortgage requires an appraisal, and that appraisal requires the lender to identify 3 comparable homes that sold in the same general area within the past 12 months. This system was designed around a housing market consisting almost entirely of rectangular wood frame boxes, and it functions reasonably well for exactly that type of structure. Monolithic domes don't fit. The people who build them tend to stay in them, and given what they cost to operate and how long they last, that's not surprising. Finding 3 recent dome sales within a reasonable geographic radius is, for most appraisers in most markets, functionally impossible. No comparables means no appraised value. No value means no mortgage approval. No mortgage means the buyer pool shrinks to cash purchasers and people who can negotiate a construction loan through a local credit union. Fewer buyers means fewer domes get built. Fewer domes mean fewer future comparables. The cycle reinforces itself. Zoning codes add a second layer of difficulty. Many municipalities require a minimum roof pitch to maintain visual uniformity across neighborhoods. A dome surface transitions from near vertical at the base to completely flat at the apex, which means it technically fails a fixed pitch requirement at virtually every point along its surface. And in states like California, obtaining a building permit for a thin shell concrete structure that local inspectors have no experience reviewing can cost more than $40,000 in engineering fees before a single load of material arrives on site. Nobody explicitly banned the roundhouse. The system simply was never designed to accommodate it, and the financial incentives have always pointed toward the easily replicable, easily financed, easily appraised rectangular box. If you're seriously considering a monolithic dome as your next project, here's what the path forward actually looks like. On financing, skip the national lenders and go directly to a local community bank or credit union. Frame the project as a construction loan from the beginning rather than attempting a standard mortgage approval. Work with a licensed general contractor who can present a complete professional project package. This dramatically improves your chances of approval. On cost, the shell before interior finishing runs $75 to $100 per square foot. Plan for the real savings to accumulate over time rather than at closing, in energy costs, maintenance avoidance, insurance premiums, and structural longevity that conventional construction simply cannot match. On education, the Monolithic Dome Institute runs a 5-day hands-on workshop in Italy, Texas, with tuition between $2,000 and $2,500. Over those 5 days, participants work on an actual dome in progress, applying foam, tying rebar, operating shotcrete equipment. You leave with construction manuals, cost estimation tools, and blueprints for smaller starter structures. The workshops also draw working contractors, which can provide a direct connection to someone capable of managing a full build if you're not planning to owner build. The monolithic dome is a steel-reinforced concrete shell shaped by the same physical principles that have kept the Pantheon standing for nearly 2,000 years. It has been certified by the federal government to withstand the most violent weather events on the planet. It has been documented surviving bombs, wildfires, and back-to-back Category 5 hurricanes. It costs a fraction of a conventional home to operate and outlasts it by generations. And the reason fewer than 900 exist as residences in America today is that the appraisal system doesn't know what to do with a round house. The technology works. The physics have been proven across centuries. The only thing standing between this structure and widespread adoption is a financial and regulatory framework that was built for a different product entirely, one that costs more to run, breaks down faster, and needs to be replaced sooner. That's not an accident. It's a business model. If this kind of unconventional building knowledge interests you, subscribing and sharing is the most direct way to ensure it keeps reaching people who are looking for it. And if you want to see what a $15 upgrade can do to make your windows outperform triple glazing, that video is right here.